GameStop has seen a huge spike in its value due to a lot of people buying up stock. How did this happen, and what does it mean for you as an investor? And what will it do to the stock market? I'm going to get into that and a little bit more, but first, welcome to the channel. This is Dollar for Dollar. My name is Heather. Thank you for joining. If you are brand new here, we talk about personal finances, everything from investing to buying a home. And today we're going to talk about GameStop and what has happened over the last few weeks and why it's important to the stock market. So, before I jump into what specifically has happened, I want to give you kind of a general understanding before I use some of this lingo. So, what typically happens in the stock market is you and I, as a typical investor, can buy shares of any company really that is publicly traded. So, Apple, Amazon, GameStop, Best Buy, Home Depot, you name it, you can go out and you can go and buy little slivers of that company by owning a share. That's what you're saying. You're saying I'm owning a small portion, okay? Now, typically you're not going to own enough for it to be anything significant, but you have a stake in that company at that point. So, what's been happening over the last 30 days, so to speak, is that big investors, okay, so we're talking about hedge fund managers. Now, hedge funds are very different from a mutual fund. With a mutual fund, you have your classic companies that you can go out and you could buy, on your own, but instead of you taking a greater risk and buying just individual shares of that company, when you buy into that mutual fund, you're getting even smaller percentages all jumbled up. So that way, for example, when Best Buy takes a hit, which, would hurt, just a single share owner, then you go and you have Target to make up for it, or you have Amazon to make up for it, or Microsoft. Like, you have a mixture of companies in there. So when some are doing really well, it's still good for you, but it's not, spectacular. Whereas when some are doing really poorly, you're not really impacted the same way. That's what a mutual fund does to you. It gives you a little bit of security there. With hedge funds, think of hedge funds as like walking into a tornado or like the wild, wild west. Like, there are no rules. In fact, there is no regulation of hedge funds, and that's why they're risky. But that's also why they're only offered to the extremely wealthy. You and I, we don't have access to hedge funds. If you're watching this, I guarantee you probably don't. So, hedge funds are managed just like a mutual fund, and this hedge fund manager will go in and will, essentially make the super wealthy even more wealthy. That's their job at the end of the day. Just like your broker's job is to make sure you have money and that you're seeing gains, same thing. Now, what is really funny about what's happened over the last 30 days or so is we've seen a huge spike in the value of GameStop, in the value of GameStop shares, because people on the internet, people on Reddit, found out that these hedge fund managers were betting against GameStop. Now, GameStop, we all know it's a retail store. They sell video games. You can even trade video games there if they deem it valuable. It's kind of like an antiquated Blockbuster in that regard. It's like you don't physically have to go to the store anymore to go buy a game. You can download them, right? That's pretty common for most of us. You can go and just download things right there on your computer. So what these internet users found was that these super wealthy hedge fund managers were going to be betting against GameStop, and they were taking out what's called a short. So by taking out a short, you're basically saying, I will guarantee that that stock is going to be worth even less in a certain time frame. So let's say it's 30 days or whatever. They go and buy up a bunch of this GameStop stock, the internet users, people on Reddit in particular. That's where they're from. They were all on Reddit. They go and they buy a bunch of it up. Now, what happens when you see a lot of activity in a share or in a company like that is it's actually usually a sign of growth, and it usually drives the price up. Well, it did. It drove the price up from $17.35 back on January 5th to closing as of when I filmed this, to $325. That's a huge jump. And what's probably the most spectacular part about this is it's not just some people on the internet who are like, well, we're just going to go buy it and we're going to drive the price up. No. When you take out a short, when you take out a bet, you essentially have to cover all of your losses. So they have to pony up the money that they have basically put forth and have already lost. And so as long as people are holding on to these shares, these hedge fund managers, these folks who bet against GameStop, can't go out and sell these stocks so that they can drive the price back down. And they can't buy them up so they can pay back the broker, because that's how they work through it. I won't get into super details because I don't want it to get confusing, but just know these people have bet against GameStop. And why it's funny is because they are now at a loss of about $91 billion. B with a B, $91 billion. And, you know, when you consider the entire stock market and all of the US capitalization, that's not huge, but it's significant enough to cause some eyebrows to raise. Like, what is happening? And because these are just regular folks like you and me who are doing this, it's even more frustrating because they are basically sticking it to Wall Street. They are sticking it to the establishment. And why is it a big deal? Why is the media covering it the way they are? Why are tech companies freaking out? Why are they halting sales like Robinhood? Why are they halting the sales of these shares? Because they all have a vested interest, okay? Every single one of them. These tech companies don't like it because they work with these financial guys, okay? They're not out looking out for you and me. They're out looking for the big guys. And if you don't believe me, in 2020, we had a crazy year. People lost their jobs. People lost their homes. Health crisis. We had people, and we still have people, who are basically unable to open their business and survive as a small, if they're not already closed, because these states, these very politically minded, call them governors, people, decided they should stop everyone's livelihood. But they're not impacted. No, not at all. Not at all impacted by it. In fact, their pockets grew bigger because of it. Because when they can keep small business down, big tech, big companies, they can prosper and they can swoop in and they can buy things dirt cheap, can't they? So, last year alone, billionaires, people with a B, right, grew their wealth as a collective whole by $1 trillion last year. $1 trillion. I just want that to sink in for a moment because we can probably all name at least somebody who is either directly impacted by COVID, either financially or health-wise. And we still know of people who are struggling because they can't open their business, because maybe they've been laid off and now they have to find new work. There are still plenty of jobs out there, but how on earth can we take these people seriously who are now throwing a tantrum, essentially, that some people on the internet decided to play back? And that's what happened here. They decided to play back and say, you know what, we're going to stick it to the man. We're going to stick it to the establishment. And trust me, there is an establishment. There's a media establishment, political establishment, the financial establishment, the educational establishment. It's all big business. It's all a business, and it's all to keep the super wealthy and super powerful in power. And if you don't believe me, do a little bit of homework. You will see how some of these names start connecting the dots and who has a vested interest in this. Even the government has an interest in this, okay? Because it's lining their pockets too. It's lining their supporters, the people who back them, political agendas all the way through, okay? 100%. The people in power don't want to lose power. These global elitists across the world have an interest in what's happening right now. And if you don't believe me, again, I won't go down that path. I will let you do some homework and some research for yourself. But trust me when I say there's a lot that's been happening in the last 30 days that greatly impacts the future of the US, if not the world. And the establishment The establishment has never had to answer to the common man. And this is a case where we're seeing a movement. And I guarantee it's not going to fizzle out with this. We're seeing a movement, things are starting to change, and people are starting to wake up. Now, I'm going to end by saying, with this whole, Reddit users buying up GameStop and what it's done to hedge fund investors and people in particular, is that it's a giant prank. The people who bought these shares don't care at the end of the day, okay? They bought the shares so that they could drive the price up and make the people, the hedge fund investors, squirm and sweat it out and have to keep buying and betting against themselves, because that's what happens. They already are in the hole, and in order to prevent themselves from having to pony up, they have to go further into the hole and just wait it out. So that's what it is. It's a waiting game right now. So these people who are taking out the bets, they have to go and make another bet. And they're like, eventually people are going to sell, right? Eventually they know that the price is going to drop, but it's a matter of when. And it's a matter of a waiting game. And how long can they hold out? That is the question. That is what we're going to wait to see. Now, I believe that what you might find after this is all said and done, because remember, hedge funds, it's kind of like walking a tornado. It's the wild, wild west. No regulation. We might actually see a little bit of regulation step in. We just might. I think so. I think based on how I've seen the government respond in the last 30 days, I think we're going to see something. And I say we're going to see regulation because, remember, the super wealthy don't want to give up their wealth. They don't want to give up their power. They don't want to give up their influence. And I think we're going to see the government step in a little bit. I really do. I think it may not be completely obvious, and they honestly may not even report it because, the establishment is in control and very much controls the narrative. And in case you weren't aware of that, only 6 people, okay, 6 people own 90% of the media, at least here in America, and that's print and television, okay? Think about that. 6 people control what you are hearing and what gets to you. It's no longer about, just reporting what's happened and the facts. It's about them pushing their agenda on you as the viewer and what they want you to see and what they don't want you to see, and what they want you to believe and what they don't want you to believe. Again, I'm not going to go any further than that. Look into it for yourself if you don't believe me, but it is extremely eye-opening once you find that out for yourself. So remember, this was just a giant prank by some people on the internet, and it got a lot of attention, and it's going to get attention until things fizzle out again. But I think it's really funny, and I almost can't not smile when I talk about it, because these are just some people sitting in their basement, more than likely, just playing a prank and trying to stick it to the man, and they're winning. And for the first time, people are playing back, and the big man doesn't know what to do about it. So thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you learned something today or just enjoyed it in general, and subscribe if you have not already. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next video.